Shana Tova. My dear ones, Tracy, Jonah, and Benji, join me in wishing you and all of your dear ones a very happy and sweet new year. May we all be inscribed in the book of life. May we all be inscribed for blessing, and may 5783 be a year of goodness, perseverance, and connection for all of us and for all the world. As we enter into each new year, it is customary to reflect on the year that has gone by. In recent years, though, it seems that we have this new tradition of reflecting on the time that has gone by, specifically since March of 2020, when COVID shut down our world for the very first time. Since then, we've had so many ups and downs that we've changed our mindset 100 times. We've had millions of meetings and game changers, creative solutions, disagreements, and policy reversals. And now, on the brink of this new year, we carry with us the acceptance that COVID is here to stay, but also the marvel of how we've progressed through it and how we continue to progress through it in this brave new world. And looking around the room tonight, I see signs of this everywhere. We have a masks-only section over here. We have a masks optional section over there. And we've got seven state-of-the-art television cameras exposing half of you to my every blemish in high definition. These are some of the blessings and some of the curses that we face currently. But specific to this new year, we bring with us the knowledge that we really are on a journey and that we've reached the point of no return. And this reminds us of our ancestors in the Torah who roamed the wilderness from Sinai to the Holy Land, a campaign that our sources say should have taken 11 days, but in reality turned into an excursion lasting 40 years. According to the plain text of the Torah, during that time the Israelites complained and bemoaned. They didn't put their trust in God, and they expressed a desire to return to Egypt, where slavery was a better option for them than wandering the desert. This made God angry, and it resulted in God waiting for this generation to die off before allowing the next generation of Israel to enter into the Promised Land. Even Moses was not permitted to enter, despite his many efforts praying for and mitigating on behalf of this generation. Recently, I read a commentary on this generation from contemporary Torah scholar and author Aviva Gottlieb Zornberg, who frames this generation of Israel in a much different light. She says that this generation was not simply a generation of complainers, but rather one of special knowledge. And to that effect, there are several Hasidic sources that refer to this generation as Dor Dea, the generation of knowledge. In this view, Dor Dea is depicted as a people who were traumatized by slavery, yet witnessed to divine miracles right before their eyes. And for the first time in 400 years, this generation had a voice. While some see that voice as complaining, others understand those complaints as the lingering effects of trauma, combined with high standards, having seen such wonders. Dr. Bruce Perry, psychiatrist and senior fellow of the Child Trauma Academy in Houston, Texas, writes the following description of trauma in his book entitled, "What Happened to You? Conversations on Trauma, Resilience, and Healing." He writes, "Trauma leaves you shipwrecked. You are left to rebuild your inner world. Part of that rebuilding, the healing process, is revisiting the shattered whole of your old worldview. You sift through the wreckage, looking for what remains, seeking your broken pieces. Your mind struggles to make sense of your new reality through dreams, intrusive images of the trauma, and reenactment. As you revisit this shipwreck, piece by piece, you find fragments and you move them to your new, safer place in the now altered landscape. You build a new worldview, and that takes time. With every traumatic event, one's worldview shifts to make sense of a new reality. And Dr. Perry adds to this that if, during this process, we keep that trauma bottled up inside of us, or if we let it out in the wrong way, then there's a good chance that we can pass that trauma down to the next generation. In this light, the book of Deuteronomy, which has never made sense to me, all of a sudden makes sense. I never really understood why there needed to be a fifth book of Torah, which is essentially a review of books 2 through 4. In Deuteronomy, Moses addresses the new generation of Israel before they enter the land. He does so with lengthy orations that painfully revisit all the trauma of the previous generation. When Moses finishes, Israel is far more prepared for the challenges that lie ahead, as if his orations were therapeutic in helping them work through the trauma of their parents. As a parent, the well-being of my children is a top priority. Looking back on these years of COVID, I ask myself, what trauma might I be handing down to them? How will growing up in the 2020s affect their lives? And what can we do right here and now to best prepare them for the world that lies ahead? For many of us, these past 3 years have been riddled with dire experiences. For me, it's been the death of my stepfather 18 months ago, a devastating miscarriage just a year ago, and a very close call, almost losing my mother, who was saved by emergency surgery, as well as her own amazing determination in recovery this past summer. And looking around this room, I am ever so aware of the many difficult losses and daunting experiences you have faced. One thing that has truly helped me recently has been being a part of a bereavement group here at Temple Shalom. We're a tight-knit group of us who have all experienced loss, have had the gift of being able to share in grief with one another. It's astonishing how close we've gotten in just 1 year together. It goes without saying that simple connections like these mean everything when it comes to persevering through tough times. But still, I wonder, how can we build upon these relationships as we transition into better days ahead and as we pass the torch onto the next generation? Last year on Erev Rosh Hashana, I told you the story of Sir Ernest Shackleton and his crew of 27 men who were shipwrecked in Antarctica, isolated from civilization for almost 2 years. Last year's story was one of survival, resilience, hope, and overcoming obstacles. This year I'd like to share with you a different kind of story, one having to do with making connections, rebuilding after a traumatic experience, bringing old traditions into a new world, and paving the way for future generations. This story is called The Wedding Dress That Made History. It's the true story of Holocaust survivor Lily Friedman, and it's written, or should I say it's recorded for the ages, by Jewish historian Helen Ziegerman Schwimmer. When you think of Jews freshly liberated from the Holocaust, what images come to mind? Many of us picture individuals famished and gaunt, wearing camp uniforms, mute with trauma. Yet most survivors jumped at the first chance they got to find joy again, forming new bonds and creating new families. In 1947, the 90 displaced persons camps that housed Jews in Germany, Austria, and Italy had among the highest birth rates in the world. Just days or weeks after the liberation, Jews began to organize. Lily Friedman and her fiancé were two of these resilient survivors. Lily wanted to wear a white gown at her wedding in 1946, but there was one problem. There weren't any gowns available at her displaced persons camp. A white wedding gown may have seemed like a frivolous request in the surreal environment of a displaced persons camp. But for Lily, the dress symbolized the innocent, normal life she and her family once led before the world descended into madness. Her fiancé, Ludwig, a cook in the camp where they both lived, solved the problem. He traded 2 pounds of coffee and a few packs of cigarettes to a pilot for a large off-white parachute. Miriam, a seamstress who was one of Lily's friends, cut the parachute into 6 panels and then turned them into a simple yet elegant wedding dress for Lily. It was a long-sleeve gown with a rolled collar and a fitted waist that tied in the back with a bow. When the dress was completed, Miriam sewed the leftover material into a matching shirt for the groom. 400 people, mostly survivors, marched 15 miles in the snow to the nearest synagogue in the German town of Celle on January 27, 1946, to attend Lily and Ludwig's wedding. The synagogue, which was damaged and desecrated, had been lovingly renovated by the survivors in Lily's camp with meager materials. Included in the backdrop was a Torah scroll that was imported from England, which rested safely in an old kitchen cabinet that had been converted into a makeshift ark. 6 months after the wedding, Lily's sister Ilona wore the dress when she married her fiancé Max, and after that came cousin Rosie and many more. Decades later, Lily was asked, "How many brides wore your dress?" "I stopped counting after 17, she remarked. With the camps experiencing the highest marriage rate in the world, Lily's gown was in high demand. In 1948, President Harry Truman permitted 100,000 Jews who had been languishing in DP camps to finally enter into the United States. Lily and Ludwig were among them. Lily, who was unable to part with her beloved dress, took it with her. Here in America, they built a home, and for 50 years, Lily kept the dress in her bedroom closet. Finally, Lily's niece, a volunteer at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C., told museum officials this amazing story and that she still had possession of the dress. Immediately, they recognized its historical significance and built a specially designed showcase for it, guaranteeing to preserve it for years to come. But before placing it in the museum, Lily and her dress had one more journey to make. When word of this story reached Germany, the German government invited Lily back to show her dress and to tell her story at a newly opened museum on site at Bergen-Belsen, the concentration camp where she had survived. Initially, she refused the invite, but then she reconsidered when she found out that the nearby synagogue in Celle was still standing. So she bravely went back with her granddaughter and her dress, first to the concentration camp where she was imprisoned, and then to the synagogue where she was married. When she arrived at the synagogue, she was disappointed to find it completely renovated. It looked nothing like she remembered, except for one thing: the ark. It was still the same old kitchen cabinet, untouched, as a testament to the profound faith of the survivors who originally restored the synagogue. There Lily stood with her granddaughter, crying tears of joy. 2 weeks later, back here in America, Lily attended her granddaughter's wedding, beaming with pride. I love this story especially for this year for a few different reasons. First of all, one thing that I have learned through our bereavement group is the importance of being able to express my feelings openly and honestly when it comes to trauma and loss. I find that when you have healthy outlets, it's much easier to make the best out of every situation that comes your way. Certainly that was the case with Lily and Ludwig. Next, I like this story because of the connectivity it displays. From the seamstress to the volunteers who restored the synagogue to Lily herself, who shared her most prized possession with 17 brides. This story exemplifies the fact that when the world turns and we are forced to adapt, we can do it and we will do it, so long as we realize that we're not in it alone. Another component I like is its generational value. It's amazing to me how the events and decisions in one person's life affect those who come later. Lily could have chosen to give up. She could have chosen not to get married or come to America, and she could have chosen not to return to Germany with her granddaughter. But she did all of these things, and in doing so, she leaves her trauma in the past while sending forth her values of perseverance, bravery, joy, and Jewish tradition, not only to her granddaughter, but also to thousands of others who will now see her wedding dress on display and learn her story. All of us have a story. All of us are on a journey. Yes, these last few years have been challenging, to say the least, but great change is often accompanied by trauma and reconstruction and resilience. Regardless of what happens next, what will always be true is that when you are loved, you will learn to love, and connectedness has the power to counterbalance any adversity. Here's to a bright new year of joy and connection. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will. Shana Tova.